everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm giving y'all some spring book recommendations. I'm honestly really excited for spring this year, and I think it's mostly because it is truly going to be spring for me, like time of growth, a time of change, a time of, all those different adjectives that we associate with spring. Because if you guys don't know, I'm graduating college at the beginning of May, which to me spring is like late March, April, and May, and then summer to me is June, July, August. I know May starts to get hot, and like in college it kind of got muddled because our summer break always started at the beginning of May, but August objectively is summer, and there's no way summer's 4 months. So May has to be spring in my head. Plus April showers bring May flowers. We know her about the spring. So hopefully these recommendations can last y'all through the next couple of months. But as I said, I'm graduating college, which is really insane because I started my channel when I was a senior in high school, and now I'm about to graduate college. And I know I haven't always been the most consistent because college is crazy, and I feel like my first couple of years I really was going through it. And then not only was I going through it, I was always working my entire time throughout college. Like there's never been a point where I didn't have at least one job in college, which I know is the reality for a lot of people, but most of the time in college I've had multiple jobs, and sometimes I haven't always had the mental capacity to be here. But I appreciate you guys who have been here, and I'm so excited to really invest the time on my channel that I've always wanted to, and really have not just like the time to do that, but also have like the mental capacity and the energy to be able to do that, because I really do love the book community. I love my channel. I love doing this. So I'm really excited to continue doing this. But spring is going to be crazy for me because, as I said, I'm graduating. I have to move out of here. I'm moving in with my boyfriend, so that's going to be really fun. I'm really, really excited for that, and to set up my little book space in there. I'm still not going to have all my books with me because we are going to be living in a 1-bedroom. But after this lease is up, we're definitely upgrading to more rooms, so I will have my full book room with everything. But enough of that yapping. We are getting into the spring book recommendations. I actually was able to pull 17 for y'all today. A lot of romance. I feel like romance is literally that girl in the spring and the summer. I love romance in the spring and the summer. So I have a lot of romances. I have some horror and thrillers that I feel like fit in this time of year, like a lot of like planty kind of horror. I also have some fantasy because there's definitely some fantasy that's good for this time of year too. That's very cozy. And then I have a couple miscellaneous books like cozy mysteries and historical fiction. So first we are going to get into our romance, since that is what we have the most of. First up, I actually have a fantasy romance, and that is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. This is a very chaotic, laugh out loud fantasy romance that I really adored. We follow our main character Cinnamon, and she is like a small town spice trader. Her whole family's into spices. That's why her name's Cinnamon. All of her siblings are named after different spices, and her and her family are like spice traders. And so she just wants to live a very peaceful, very demon-free life. But then after one night of, drinking because she got drunk, she ended up saving a demon. As you can tell by the title, she saved this demon named Fallon, and she thought he was going to be super evil and stuff like that, but then he ends up actually being pretty attractive and annoyingly charming, and he's actually on a mission to destroy the same goddess that Cinnamon's people worship, because she's actually the person that enslaves a whole bunch of demons. And then Cinnamon gets wrapped up in this adventure to go basically destroy this goddess, and it is so fun. It's very laugh out loud. Even if you don't like fantasy that much or fantasy romance, I feel like you could still like this one because it's not like super heavy on like the world or like what we think of traditionally with fantasies. It is definitely more focused on like our characters and their relationships. So depending on what you like, you may or may not like this one. I will say this one is pretty spicy, so I know some people don't like spice. I know some people love spice. I am kind of neutral. I don't really care as long as it fits the book and what the book is advertising, I'm fine with. So this book is pretty spicy if you're looking for that, but it is such a fun adventure, and I highly recommend picking this one up. I then wanted to recommend an author, and that is Ashley Poston, specifically her adult romances. I know Ashley Poston has written some like YA sci-fi stuff because I used to own one of her YA sci-fi books back in the day, but she is more known for now her adult contemporary romances that have a little bit of magical realism in it. I think her most popular work is The Dead Romantics, but also there's A 7-Year Slip and A Novel Love Story, and I feel like all three of those are really, really good for this time of year. I specifically wanted to mention my two favorites of hers, which I feel like are the best for spring, and that is The 7-Year Slip and A Novel Love Story. The 7-Year Slip is a very heart-wrenching but very magical contemporary romance, and we follow our main character Clementine and her aunt that she was extremely close to ended up passing away due to suicide. So we start off very sad. A lot of Ashley Poston's books have a really heartbreaking level to them, but then also have this really fun magical realism. They're cozy and they have like this really great romance. It offers a lot of levity in the story, but then also has a lot of heart to it, which I really love. She believes that love and life should be very practical, but then she moves into her aunt's apartment in New York City after her aunt passed away, and she actually finds a man is already living there, and she's very confused on where this man came from, but turns out that he's actually living 7 years in the past, and that this apartment is a magical time bending apartment and people can travel back and forth in time in the apartment. So he is 7 years in the past and she is in the present, but they are both meeting at the same time and place in this apartment. And he's so charming and dreamy and they have this connection that builds, but then obviously they're 7 years apart. And she also begins to question everything that she thought she wanted. This one again is so heartbreaking, but it has so much levity in it, and I feel like our main character Clementine grows so much in this story, and that's really why I think it's ideal for spring, because we just see her, and I feel like spring is definitely one of those time periods that we are coming out of death and darkness and we are growing into something new and beautiful, and I feel like that is really what Ashley Poston does in her books. Not necessarily saying that her books are super dark or heavy, but they have that heaviness to it, and then we are kind of working out of that, and I feel like that's like our transition into winter into spring. A novel love story follows a writer named Eileen. She's going through a really difficult, rough time, and so she's really looking forward to having her annual book club meeting because she has a best friend in real life that she just met, you know, organically, and her friend loved this specific book series by this author, and they met other people online who also love this series. So once a year they meet at a central location to meet up, read, drink wine, you know, talk about the book series, and the book series is actually unfinished because the author passed away before she could finish it, which is very sad, and obviously Eileen doesn't really have closure with her favorite series. So she's really going through it. She's excited for her annual book club retreat, but then nobody ends up being able to go. They're all doing different things. Like one of them gets a surprise to go on a trip with their significant other, and then other people are taking care of like their parents and stuff like that. So nobody can really go except Eileen. She decides that she's gonna go anyways because she just needs to be away for a little bit, but then her car ends up breaking down in this small town, and she soon realizes that the small town that she is in is actually the small town of her favorite book series. So she is now stuck in the town with all the characters, and she's like, I literally know everything about you, but you don't know anything about me. They don't know that they're in a book series, and so there's a lot going on. But then she begins to kind of meddle and try to get some of like the characters to have some closure and happy endings that she was not able to get in the book series because it's unfinished. And she also has a couple run-ins with the grumpy bookstore owner who really does not like her very much, but she's kind of confused because he's actually not a character in the book series, but every other person in this town is. So she is kind of curious on like who he is, where he came from, etc., etc. I know a lot of people didn't love this one as much as I did, but I really did like it, and I feel like getting stuck in a book that you love so much and being able to talk to the characters that you love, I just really adored that, and I love how everything was explained at the end. I think this was such a well-plotted book. I absolutely adored it. Then I want to recommend the Part of Your World series by Abby Jimenez. I love this series. I absolutely devoured this series last year. Like I ate it up. I loved it, okay? I feel like this one is the perfect spring romance. It has like small town charm. It has fresh beginnings. We are following Alexis Montgomery, who is a big city ER doctor, and she's from a very prestigious medical family, and there's this guy, Daniel Grant, who is a really, really kind carpenter from a tiny town near where she lives, and they have a roadside encounter one day that leads to a one-night stand, and Alexis is very drawn to him. He's very drawn to her, but Alexis is bound by her family and her family commitments and pressure. So she kind of wants to stay away but can't, and she's drawn to him, and I love this one. I feel like we get so much about the town, and I love the small town charm. There's like a lot of little things in here. Like this book has goats, and I'm like, I feel like that's springy. Like having kind of like those farm elements to it is so springy to me, and I feel like this one is just such a beautiful love story. We get so much of the side characters and so much of their stories, which I really loved, and the rest of the series is amazing. I feel like you could start with Part of Your World in the spring, read yours truly in the spring, beginning of summer, and then read Just for the Summer in like July or something, and I feel like it'd be perfect to like binge over the course of like spring into summer. I also wanted to recommend the graphic novel series Heartstopper because this one is so cute, and I feel like romance again is perfect for this time of year, and this one is just so like pure and joyful. We follow Charlie, who is a very like anxious overthinker, and Nick, who is a very sweet rugby player, and they go to like high school together. I can't really remember what it's called in England, but it takes place in England, but it's basically like the US equivalent equivalent of high school, and they strike up a friendship, and slowly it begins to turn into more. I love the queer representation we get in this series, and we also see them like navigate love, identity, mental health, and just like the challenges of growing up through high school into college. And I love this series. It has so many like very soft moments and meaningful conversations. I think this is such a beautiful series. A lot of people love the series. It is adored. There's also a show. I haven't watched the show, but maybe if you love the series so much, you could also watch the show in the springtime as well. It is so pure and precious, so I had to recommend it to y'all. And lastly, for romance, I have a love song for Ricky Wilde. I love this one. It is such like a lush romance, and it has to do with a lot with like jazz and the Harlem Renaissance, which I really love too. We follow Ricky Wilde, of course, and she's very like a free-spirited dreamer, but she's trapped by her southern wealthy family. So she decides, you know what, F y'all, I'm gonna go do what I want to do. And she opens up a flower shop in Harlem. And so that's kind of where the spring elements come in, is through her opening this flower shop. And then there's also some other elements of flowers throughout this whole story, which I love. And she meets this jazz musician named Ezra, who's kind of like dark and mysterious and has a lot of secrets of his own. This does have kind of like a dual timeline element in it, where we follow Ricky Wilde present day, but then we also get some flashbacks to the Harlem Renaissance and like the jazz age in New York City, which I loved. And I actually skipped one of the romances on accident, and that is Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. We follow Haley in this book, and she is a free-spirited, chaotic gardener, and she's had a crush on Julian, who is this guy from her town since they were teenagers. He's actually now like a very buttoned up, brooding professor now, and they both kind of left and come back to this town, I believe. So now her crush is kind of being reinvigorated, especially because she lands a job landscaping his family's vineyard. So their paths cross, and she begins to have a crush on him again, and Haley begins to leave him secret love notes anonymously, and things take an unexpected turn where he really begins to like the person over these notes. And it's one of those things like You've Got Mail, where she's writing notes anonymously, but she knows him in real life as well, and so it kind of goes around that way. It's not exactly like You've Got Mail, but like similar. Again, I feel like this one's perfect for spring because we're literally following a gardener, and she's working on like a vineyard and doing landscaping, and I just, all those plant vibes I feel like are really just screaming spring. Next, we're going to be moving on to the horror and thriller books. So first up, I have Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This one is pretty short, and I absolutely love this one. It's one of my favorite books of last year. We follow Ro, and she has just recently moved to this small town and gotten a teaching or professing job. I can't remember, but I know she is teaching, and she goes to like the farmer's market one day, and she sees this beautiful woman tending one of the booths there, and her name is Ash, and Ash kind of sells a whole bunch of stuff at her booth. Whatever you could think of that you can make from home, she makes, like baked goods, plants, like I think she has her own bees, so she does like honey and stuff like that. Like anything you can make at home, she makes it and sells it there, and she ends up gifting a plant to our main character Ro, and they begin to kind of strike up this relationship that's kind of like friendship, but then also kind of like this intoxicating romance, and it has a lot of secrets woven in. And I feel like this book has a lot to do with like obsession and love, but there's a lot to do with like plants and gardening and bloom, literally like the name of the book, the title. I feel like it really has to do with spring a lot, but it is kind of like a sapphic love story turned wrong, and the end of this really went insane. And I remember listening to the audiobook. I remember exactly where I was driving when I listened to this audiobook because it was just so good. I loved it. The one thriller I have on this list is The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchinson. I actually read this one quite a few years ago, and it's one of my most popular videos where I literally just read this book alone, but it is a really disturbing take on a spring garden, because hidden away from the world there is a beautiful garden filled with flowers and butterflies, but turns out that these butterflies are actually young women who are kidnapped and tattooed with intricate wings by this man called the gardener. And the FBI rescues 2 survivors from this garden, and they begin to recite what happened to them in this garden, and it's horrifying, it's deeply disturbing, but it does have a lot to do with like flowers and butterflies, and so I feel like it's really good for spring, especially if you're a thriller lover. I think it's hard to find good spring thrillers. Summer thrillers, not so much. Winter thrillers are easy to find too, and I feel like dark academia, like that kind of stuff's good for fall, but a good spring thriller is hard to find, and I feel like this one definitely fits the bill for that. Moving back to horror, we have a novella, and that is Comfort Me with Apples. We are following Sophie, and she has like the perfect life, a beautiful home, an amazing husband, and a community where everything is just right until it's not. The cracks begin to show, and Sophie begins to feel like she doesn't quite fit in, and things are very, very different in this small community than you would think. I can't really talk about it. Some people say literally what it is, and I'm like, that's a spoiler for the entire story, like what it is, but it does kind of relate to a story that we all know, and I think that this book was so well executed. I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I might reread it because I feel like I don't remember as much as I would like to. This one has a lot to do with like apples and a garden as well, so I feel like it's amazing for spring too. Next up, I have Sorrowland by River Solomon. It definitely is horror, but I feel like it also leans a bit like fantastical and sci-fi at the same time. We are following Vern, who is a young woman who escapes from a strict religious compound and flees into the woods. So a lot of this book is her in the woods, which is why I feel like it's great for this time of year. But she gives birth to twins and begins to raise them in the wild, far away from the world. But then her body begins to mutate and have weird things happening with it, and it's turning into something more than human. So she begins to seek out scientists to help her figure out what's going on with her body, because obviously she wants to be around to be able to raise her kids. I feel like even what her body starts to do is definitely giving like spring, it's giving plants, it's giving growth. I think this one was very interesting, and I think a lot of people will really enjoy it. And then lastly for horror, we have another kind of genre bending one, and that is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. This one's actually a YA book, but I absolutely loved this one. We are following three sisters who disappeared for a month as children and came back with no memory of what happened to them. And they came back just very different. Like even the way that they look, their appearance is very like otherworldly. And now they're mostly grown. Like I think two of the sisters are adults, and then our main character that we're following, she is a teenager. And one of the sisters, the oldest one, ends up going missing. So our main character and the middle sister begin to search and figure out what happened to their sister, and they begin to learn that there have been things that always lurk in the shadows behind them because of what happened to them as children. I love this one. Again, this one has a lot to do with like plants. How the horror comes about is very plant. This one is definitely leaning very heavily into eco horror. A lot of the stuff to do with like the plants and the stuff in the environment play into the horror a lot in this book. So I feel like it's really great to read in the springtime. I love this story so much. I know a lot of people are very cautious of YA. When I read this one, I absolutely loved and adored it, and I still think about it to this day. There's one other horror that I didn't put on this list, but I actually do want to mention. I completely forgot about putting it on this list, but that is Follow Me to Ground. This is another horror that I loved. Like, please, I feel like this one's so underrated. You need to pick it up. This one follows a woman and her father, and they have been basically blessed with being able to heal people. They help the sick locals, who are also known as the Cures, by basically like doing a lot of stuff, but usually they bury them in the ground and then kind of like have them come up from the ground. So again, like a lot to do with like planting and rebirth. And our main character is very uninterested in the Cures until she meets this guy named Samson, and she begins to strike up an affair with Samson, much to the displeasure of her father. This one again is super short, but I feel like it's perfect for the spring, and I really loved it, and it's so underrated, so please pick it up. Next, we're moving on to fantasy, and I have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and this one is so fun, and I feel like this kind of like cozy fantasy out in the wilderness where we're finding fairies is just so good for the spring. We're following Emily Wilde, and she is a professor, I believe, at Cambridge, and this takes place in like the early 1900s. She's trying to complete this encyclopedia on fairies, so she's going to this last little place that she needs to go to research their fairies before she completes her encyclopedia. And her rival, who's actually her only friend as well, named Wendell, comes to the little town that she's in to assist her, and they begin to work with the villagers to figure out everything about these fairies. But then Emily soon begins to realize that magic is far more dangerous than she anticipated. And I feel like again we're literally like going after fairies to research them with Emily. I feel like that's very spring, and I think the other books take place in different seasons. I haven't read the third book, but this is a complete trilogy. The third book just came out, so I feel like if you're looking for something to binge over the spring as well, this one is another good one. Then I also have The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This one I feel like is so gentle and comforting and just like a warm hug, you know, like this one is truly that to me. We follow Linus Baker, and he is a caseworker at the Department of Magical Youth, which is basically kind of like social services but for magical children in this but basically for like magical children, because there are magical beings in this world. And so he is this caseworker, and he is very much a rule follower. He lives a very kind of bland basic life. He doesn't really do much besides go to work, come home, see his cat, and that's it. But then he gets this assignment to go to this little island, which apparently has the most dangerous children in the entire world, including Lucy, aka Lucifer. And he also meets their kind-hearted caretaker named Arthur. And Linus begins to question everything he thought he knew about belonging and family and love. And it's just so heartfelt and heartwarming. And I love this story so much. And there is a second book that just came out at the end of last year, which I also read and loved. So again, if you're looking for something to kind of binge a little bit, there's 2 books in this series, and I feel like they're both phenomenal. Then lastly, for fantasy, I have The Tea Dragon Society, which is actually a graphic novel, and this one follows Greta, who is a young blacksmith, and she stumbles upon the world of tea dragons, which are tiny, adorable little creatures that grow magical tea leaves. She begins to kind of explore these tea dragons and the community around them, and becomes close to the members of the Tea Dragon Society, including the shy and kind-hearted Minette. It has amazing artwork and it is so fun and magical. I really, really adored this one. Now we're on to our last category, which is just like other books that didn't fit into the other 3 categories. The first one is a historical fiction, and that is Wayward. This one is actually a multi-generational story where we are following 3 women. One of them is in 1619 and she is accused of witchcraft. The other one is a woman trapped by societal expectations in 1942. And then our main character, Kate, in 2019, and she is escaping from an abusive relationship. And they're all drawn to this mysterious wayward cottage that their family owns to kind of escape from whatever they're dealing with in their present day. And I just love how the story was woven together. I think it was so beautiful, and I really, really enjoyed this one a lot, considering that it's historical fiction, and historical fiction is not really my thing, but I feel like it's one of those genres where when I read it, I love every single one I pick up. Just like when I pick up middle grade, I love every single one I pick up. I think this one is amazing, and it is really heavy with what these women are dealing with, but if you can handle that content, I think that this one is a must read. Then lastly, I have 2 cozy mysteries. One of them I recently read, and that is Shady Hollow. This one is so fun. It's like a woodland cozy mystery because all the characters in the books are actually like woodland creatures. So they are humanoid, like they have jobs and family and have just like normal human lives, but they're little woodland creatures. One of the members of this little town of Shady Hollow, who is a curmudgeonly toad, ends up getting murdered. And we are following our main character, Vera, who is actually a Fox journalist in this town as she is beginning to investigate and figure out who murdered this little toad. People describe this one as like Animal Crossing meets Agatha Christie, and I feel like that is the perfect description of this book. Like if you love Animal Crossing, you will love this one. And I just feel like with the woodland creatures and everything like that, it's definitely giving spring. And lastly, I have Daisies for Innocence, which is another cozy mystery. This one follows our main character who runs an aromatherapy shop in this charming little small town, as most cozy mysteries take place in. She crafts these little custom scents and tends to her magical garden, but then her ex's new girlfriend ends up turning dead and everybody is suspecting her. So she begins to look into the town and investigate everything for herself to try and clear her own name, because she's literally the prime suspect and she's like, I did not kill that girl. I just think this one is a really fun cozy mystery. If you like cozy mysteries, you'll probably like this one. It was a pretty fun read. So those are all my spring book recommendations. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I love doing seasonal recommendations so much. If you guys have any spring book recommendations for me, please leave them down in the comments. Even though my spring TBR is very extensive and long, I'm actually doing a video on my spring TBR over on my Patreon. I usually do my seasonal TBRs as exclusive videos for my top tier over there. If you're interested in those TBRs, I literally have so many spring books that I'm excited to read. While you're down in the comments telling me y'all's spring book recommendations, you guys can also leave me any flower emoji that you would like, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye, everybody! I'm riding around in the kitchen, soaking the moments we live in, yeah. You got the nerve to be on me, taking your life on IG. If you got my number, don't at me, cause baby, I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus.